Right now, though, we're going to talk about this. The talkSPORT presenter and Manchester United fan, Hugh Wozencroft, wanted to have his say on the Paul Pogba situation at Manchester United. It's come to an end, as we well know. He will be leaving when his contract expires at the end of this month. And Hugh was talking on talkSPORT this week. He feels the club's hierarchy have to take some of the blame for the Pogba situation and questions whether the French midfielder was actually a total flop, like some say, at Old Trafford.
To be perfectly honest, aside from the fact that there aren't great midfielders left at Manchester United, in all of the 6 years of his underwhelming performances and people telling me he doesn't run enough and he doesn't track back, he was still starting in Manchester United's best 11. They never bought a better player than him to come and play at Manchester United in central midfield in 6 years. So if he is such a failure and he is so underwhelming, why hasn't the club replaced him? Why haven't they got players to complement him so they get more out of him?
Okay, so that's Hugh's take on the situation. He's saying, well, look, 6 years there. Yeah, he ultimately, it has been, as he rightly pointed out, underwhelming. The fact that he left the club originally on a free, comes back for nearly 90 million, and now is leaving on a free. From a business point of view, it's a complete failure. But to not make more money out of him as such. But is he right? Is he right in saying that actually there was no one else better than him to be in that side because they couldn't find anyone else?
No, Hugh's spot on, without a doubt. I mean, look, you should never be buying a player to think I'll make money on him. You know, and yes, he walked into the door after leaving as a free and they paid a record fee for him. You shouldn't be thinking about, what's the resale value? And yes, they would have tried to re-sign him on a new deal, but it's gone way past that. There was a lot of issues at Old Trafford.
But you are paying 90 million to hopefully bring success to the club, which makes you money in turn.
Yeah, well, so Alex Ferguson broke the transfer record regularly as a manager because he kept improving the team and kept complementing players within a side. And this club has been left to rot in many ways. And I think, yes, they've spent loads and loads of money, but it was really one major signing. If you go back through Alex Ferguson's career, he broke the British transfer record regularly. Mm-hmm. And I remember him paying 7 million for Barthez, who was a world record fee at the time for a goalkeeper. That's after the Gary Pallisters of this world and many, many others. He broke records for players. He's not the first player, Paul Pogba, to mention about how the club has been run. And the sort of attitude within the hierarchy at Man United.
Well, it's interesting you say that. And actually, when you look at the timeline of Manchester United since Paul Pogba's been there, their failure, if you like, isn't all down to him. Of course it's not. But he's been a target. He's been the scapegoat for a lot of people. But you're right to mention he's not the only one to mention there are bigger issues at play at Manchester United. Zlatan Ibrahimovics spent 2 seasons at United between 2016 and 2018, 53 appearances in all competitions, 29 goals. He said this of his time at Manchester United: everyone thinks of United as a top club, one of the most powerful in the world. And seen from the outside, it looked that way to me. But once I was there, I found a small, closed mentality.
Which is very damning. Well, it's damning because he's played for some of the biggest clubs in Europe. And, when you've played at Barcelona and you've played in Milan and, you're looking around and thinking, well, yeah, of course it's a huge football club. But within the camp, inside the camp, it's not. And, from my era where United were dominated, I always knew, and all the Man United players that I knew played for them, they all made it feel like this is an incredibly big club. The TV numbers around the world are extraordinary when Man United play. So, that's telling you the sort of effect they have as a club globally, which is huge. But then you have players who are inside the camp who actually think, well, no, it hasn't got the mentality of a big club within the, the training ground and the dressing rooms and the training ground and all what happens.
Yeah, they still have a pull, like you say, as a fan base. Yeah. They have a huge pull. You can't question that at all. But what I always find startling about Manchester United is how slow they have been in terms of, and I use the word modernising in inverted commas, speech marks, because you look at other clubs. A lot of clubs had sporting directors or technical directors, whatever it was, in a lot earlier than Manchester United. A lot of clubs had set-piece specialists, whether you agree with them or not. They all had these finer margins that they were trying to get one over another club with. They brought them in earlier on. I mean, it sounds ridiculous to say it, but even social media. Manchester United were one of the slowest clubs to react to social media in terms of even having a Manchester United Twitter account. I know that's a really minor point, that one, but my point is they've been so stagnant and slow to react to a lot of things when other clubs have just progressed and realised they needed to do more to become better. Yeah,
it's a great point, Nat, because when I first started, when I retired from football, I started working for Littlewoods. I was a sponsor. I played poker.
Bulls?
Yeah, no.
Oh, I see. Sorry,
the company Littlewoods, and I done work for them, and one of the guys there ended up moving to Liverpool in the about 2007, somewhere around that time, who I knew. And the problems at Liverpool of buying a football kit, they couldn't get shorts and they could get tops, and it was all a mess. And ended up going there to work there and change the image of Liverpool and all, just merchandising. Just a simple thing, which you think, well, that's got no relevance to the team and how they play. But it's the whole structure of the club has to be right. Yeah. Bayern Munich have been the envy of Europe for many years, okay, because the club is run incredibly well. And it also doesn't have the budgets of the biggest leading clubs. And yet they've still competed at the very top level, Bayern Munich. And they have been the envy. So the model of Manchester United is clearly one of failure, and it's not just been on the pitch of what you've seen, but obviously things like players like Zlatan, he's not got no grievances with Man United. No. He's probably thought, what an opportunity to go and play there, but realised quite quickly, wow, this club is run in a very, very strange way for someone of such power within the game. And Fergie had that. Man United was run properly to a level on everything from recruit. Yes, they spent 80 million on Maguire and they spent 50 million on Wan-Bissaka, and they've done a lot of this, but it feels like everything's a reaction to what everybody else is doing, but not their own ideas.
They've been left behind by everybody else. So with getting back on to Paul Pogba, he's not the only one that's leaving this summer. Jesse Lingard, Juan Mata, that's also been announced that they'll be leaving when their contracts expire. In terms, though, of Pogba, and the reason we're talking more about him is because of that fee, because he came back to the club. How would you view his time then at the club in general?
Well, from a player's perspective, very disappointing, because we all know, and I've never met any player that's ever said anything different of what a talent he is. And we all know he's a fantastic player. He's got everything, Paul Pogba. And yet, we've only seen it on the odd occasion in a Man United shirt. And I think he fell out of love with the club about 3 years ago.
But this is what I was going to ask you, because it was mooted a while ago that it was talk about him leaving. Yeah. And yet he stayed on and he stayed on. In retrospect, should they have sold him a few years ago?
I think it would have been the best idea. Once you have a player that clearly isn't happy, or you're not quite sure if he really wants to be here as much as he should want, you should be desperate to stay at a football club. They never come a renegotiation of a contract. Fans were a bit, it was difficult. It was a 50-50 call at Man United with most of the fans, wasn't it? And I think within the dressing room, he probably looked around and thought, we're winning nothing. When you have a top player who's won a World Cup, who's at the very highest order in the game, and he's looking around thinking, well, is it just about how well I play? And, he needed help from a better quality of player within the camp, definitely. Because
everyone always talks about why could he not repeat his performances that he has for France, for Manchester United? But is that down to personnel? Is that the way that France play that Man United didn't play because they didn't bring out the best of Paul Pogba?
No, I think there was failures, without a doubt. And I just think when you have a continual turnover of managers and they're expecting you to do certain things, you only had to... you look at the French national team, Nat. He had Matuidi in his team, which he was in the team really to do a lot of the doggy work for Paul Pogba, because they wanted him to get on the ball and be effective offensively. That's what they wanted. So Matuidi came in to do the water carrier job, if you like, for Paul Pogba. And it worked brilliantly because they had running power. They have pace in their team of Griezmann and Mbappe, and he fitted into that style. Look, we could go on all day, but it's quite clear now the failure of United, and it's not just down to one player. You can't have a scapegoat into with Pogba. Although I did feel that he'd really had switched off from loving the club and was waiting. He was just letting his contract run down in the end.